And we're live. Hey,
Hi.
Hello. Hello.
what's
Hi.
uh, what's wrong with the symmetry today?
Something
Yeah,
is
it's a little
off.
bit of. No,
Can you move it?
Yeah, so we have 5 people today. So hello everyone. Hello Shinedoe.
Hello.
Hello Nene. Hello
Hello.
Henning.
Hello.
Hello
Hello.
Joris.
Hi.
hey, Jochem.
So yeah, 5 people hanging out. All
Thank
good.
you for the invite.
Thank you so much for having
Yeah.
us.
Nice to see
Yes.
you
Thank
guys.
you. Yeah.
Yeah, it should be fun. Joris is here because we did some studio work today together. Can I talk about that?
Yeah, of
What
course
is
you can.
for?
Yeah,
Please.
Anyone can talk about anything. Yeah,
Okay,
sure.
okay, okay.
No, hit it on.
Yeah, so he asked me uh, to be a guest on his next project. Basically, he can explain what it is. But
Yeah.
so I said, yeah, come over and we'll
Yeah.
do it here, and then you can stay around for the knob Twiddlers thing. So it's so here we are.
Okay. And what kind of project?
The project is I'm making new mixity, which is something I do once every couple of years. And it's like a double mixity, and I usually take a lot of time to do these things. And this time, it is a Rotterdam mixity. Like it's kind of branded for Rotterdam. And obviously, Jochem's from Rotterdam.
Oh, that's the first time you tell me.
Oh, you didn't know? No, I think I told you. I'm pretty sure.
Oh yeah.
I think I told you.
I thought there was a conceptual thing, but
No, but that's really the thing.
okay. So it's the actual theme of it. Okay.
So I asked Jochem, and I also asked Secret Cinema, Jeroen Verheij, who is actually not living in Rotterdam anymore, but obviously a Rotterdam hero as well. So I made a track with him, and we did that over the internet. And even though we live in Amsterdam, but that was the beginning of the lockdown, and we were both like, "Oh, let's just do it like online." And then with Jochem, he was like, "Yeah, I'd love to do this, but I'm not going to do this online with you. We're just going to have to do this in the studio together."
I want to look a person in the eyes, you know.
Yeah.
But you produced the track online
No,
together. Backing.
Jochem and me.
No,
not.
you and Jochem did it live, but with
Yeah.
Secret Cinema you did it back and
Yeah,
forth over the internet.
Basically, what I kind of made a remix of a sketch that he sent me. He made a sketch. He sent me like 10 or 12 different tracks, and I chose the one track where I heard like enough that I was really inspired to make something, and he sent me all the separate stems, and then I started remixing it and rewriting bits and pieces. So that was a lot of fun. But today was also very inspiring, and it took a long time. And we were jamming, and then all of a sudden we were like, oh, we need to eat something as well.
Yeah,
And,
by the time
did
the
you-
sound started to be okay, then it was knob Twiddlers time. But yeah, some really good stuff came out.
And you record all of it, or did you like take all the recording of the all day, or
Yeah,
have
basically
you?
that's what Jochem does, which is insane because he must have like a whole hard disk full of recordings for
Yeah.
today. Like basically from the first moment we switch on the gear, like everything is on. And at some point I was saying like, shall we start recording now? And he's like, no, it's all recording. And I was like, oh,
Oh
really?
wow!
But it's gonna be mad to go through everything.
Yeah.
And already like on separate channels, everything. Are you recording everything on the separate channels,
Yeah.
or stereo output done?
No.
Well, the thing is, usually for every session in this studio, we built a new setup. So there's like lots of synths and drum machines and gear lying around the studio on shelves, and there's this. Let me see if I can show you. There's this performance island, like in the middle.
Yeah, I really like that actually.
Madness.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
so basically, what we do is for every session happening in Stoor, we build a setup. So we start with, sometimes we start with pieces of gear that the guest has brought along, that they are familiar with and they know really well. And then we add like extra pieces, and we make longer chains. We put like pedals in between and stuff like that. And so every time a new stream is added to the setup, it's added to an extra audio input. So there's connections going through to the desk and to the sound card, So we start out with usually like maybe 4 tracks recording at the same time, or 2 stereo tracks. But when the system becomes more complex and grows, the more is split out to separate channels. So it's one recording with a timeline that starts out with, maybe a few tracks, and then at the end it's like
16 channels.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, so it's like a way of not wasting too much time thinking about something, and just play it and record it on the go.
Nice.
Yeah, I
And
really
is
liked.
it,
I like the setup.
oh.
What you have, that you face each other, and I saw that when you did that with Stranger, right?
Ah,
I was
yeah.
like, I think that is a really great interaction between the partner you have, and you can talk, but you can still,
100%.
you do your thing, but there's this interaction. I think this is a great way of working. I think Schwefelgeld does that on stage when they perform. They face each other, and I think a couple of other acts do that. I think that is a
Giant
really
Swan.
people. Yeah,
Ah, yeah.
I
It's
think
really nice
that's-
because you can see what the other person is doing. I can see when he reaches for the bass drum or the high pass for the bass drum. I know the beat's coming back in.
Exactly.
He
Yeah.
kind of can anticipate, and it's he does some real counting as well.
Yeah.
He does.
Then he forgot to actually punch it in.
Do you have the banana thing? I remember you did that with, what was it, Collapse 3000, the banana turn?
Yeah.
Wasn't
Well,
there something I saw somewhere
What's
on the internet?
yeah, that was when Chris and I play together. It's 8 decks and shitloads of drum machines and extra things that we play live, and so you have shitloads of channels, and the only way it works to keep everything together is to have that one person has the bass, the control of the bass. So we have this banana and we hand it over to each other, so the person who has the banana has the bass.
Okay, that's a good
Nice.
thing.
But I mean, it works
nice.
really well, because you can continue playing whatever you want, and there's never any confusion about this, So one person controls the bass for like I don't know, 20 minutes, half an hour, 10 minutes, depends on what section, what we're doing. But when you get handed the banana, okay, now it's my turn for the bass.
I
And
saw
every-
that and I find that was super cool. Just
And
here,
what I'm
just the
curious
banana.
about is
some
is
friends are showing
everything
up.
is everything
Sorry.
in the box? Is everything external, or you also do
Everything.
a combination computer, or is
I think the
everything
only thing
hardware?
the only thing that we recorded in the box was the MIDI for my synth chords. Because I tried working with the internal sequencer, something I'd never done before, and I was doing it for an hour, and I had 3 notes. I was like, okay, let's move on to MIDI now. Yeah.
Okay, and because I notice when I work, say out of the box with hardware, and mix it with in the box with the plugins, there's always sometimes a delay, and or you have to fix it yourself. And I was wondering, is there problems with latency, or
I think the way Jochem does
everything is really tight in sync?
Yeah, the way Jochem basically does it is quite unique because he doesn't use a mixer. So he just, like, all the audio goes into the computer and then it comes out. So let's say he would use a VST as well, like a plugin or something, synthesizer. It will come out at the same time as the audio that he's recording real time. So there's a small delay in when you're playing the outboard gear, but it's hardly noticeable if you don't use any plugins.
Yeah, so what yours is, technically you're listening to the sound card, not to the real-time audio. So you're listening to everything through with latency, basically. And sometimes with really with things that are really critical, like throwing in something right on the beat, it can be noticeable. But once your head adjusts to the latency, it's fine, But yeah, you have to get used to it. But if you have slow movements, there's really no problem. Your head kind of adjusts to it, and it works fine.
What sound card is it?
Yeah, I was gonna ask.
It has very low latency. I have two 16-channel Lynx Auroras.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
And they are just very neutral and very
yeah.
I mean, I've seen a couple of people using that method to play live, at stage, and I've seen that a little bit going critical. It's like playing that live. I mean, for recording, I think it's really great, but for live, I always find it a little bit like critical, because like computer, relying everything on the computer, even though you're working on the hardware, in the end everything is on the computer and everything is on the sound card. You really need a good sound card, good computer for that to work, right? Like,
I mean,
otherwise,
Yeah, I know what you mean, but that's just the way the system is set up here, and there is a mixer, but it's also pre sound card, you know. So it's going, if I use the direct out, so I have access to EQ like instantly. It's still going into the computer after that, and I don't know. It's just for me, the last 5 years I've worked like this, and it's the most productive way I've ever done it.
I mean, it's basically hardware monitoring, right? You obviously you sequence it in I don't know which DAW, Ableton or Logic, but you monitor the audio, and I think that is a very precise way, especially if you do not really like mix the two worlds of digital, like in the box and out of the box, so you can monitor the audio. I do that with I have at home, I have an RME, a Fireface, and I use the RME software, Total Mix, for it, right? You can also like route it a lot and like in really creative ways. And I personally think that it sounds a bit like more accurate than, let's say, you go through Ableton, for example. I think there is a, I mean, obviously the audio engine of Logic or Live does something, and the hardware monitoring does also something. So I prefer the hardware monitoring over the software monitoring in many cases, especially when it's just jamming. I think you have more dynamic range, you have more headroom. I sometimes feel that it's punchier, it's more, I don't know, I like it. I like hardware monitoring a lot, especially when it's just about jamming around, right? That's I like this approach a lot. Yeah.
But Shinedoe, you mean you also have instances where you are playing things from your DAW or your sequencer, and then monitor stuff that is coming in live into the same audio mix. Is that what you mean, dealing with the latency? Because then you are basically monitoring, like what Henning calls hardware monitoring, with stuff playing internally at the same time, and then indeed you get like a difference in time between the two sources.
Yeah, but I switch. I use the desk. Oh, am I?
What happened?
I don't know what happened.
Oh my God, Shinedoe was gone.
You hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. You're
Yes.
there.
I don't know what happened.
You're there, but you're gone at the same time.
Maybe you stopped the cam. Did you
No,
stop
I
the cam?
didn't. Okay, let's see. Okay, let's see. I can stop it. What?
there you go.
Oh, maybe by accident. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, but I switch on the mixer. So between, once I record the hardware, and then I switch to Ableton to hear the hardware with Ableton. So I do first the hardware, and then I do, maybe it's a long way, but first the hardware record, and then I record with the plugins. So and I have a multi-clock. I have a multi-clock that connects, all the hardware. You too as well.
I love it.
It's
a total game changer. Yeah, it's a game changer. Yeah.
So it's like I have basically a setup. I have the inner box. I have a outer box with all the hardware, and then I have the part with the modular. And I still, it's like, and I use, I use all the three parts in one. I don't know how you guys work, but yeah.
I lost my mind so many times over latency, and since I have the multi-clock, I saved a preset, a certain like delay on the multi-clock that shifts the MIDI chain earlier than the inner, like the in the box metronome. So I have pretty much everything on the hardware chain, and the internal clock or the metronome. But what I notice is that certain plugins create latency, or I don't know, sometimes it's just fucked up. But with the multi-clock, you can then just like, you know, shift it back in, or on purpose create a certain delay, or at the shuffle. So for me, really, when I discovered the ERM, because there's the Acme, the clock, I don't know what it's called, but there's,
Yeah, that's the one I've got. That's the one we've got here. Yeah.
That is a bit more complex, I think, and because you have, I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, but you have maybe more channels and whatever. So I knew this before I had the multi-clock, but I think budget reasons, I decided to get the multi-clock, because the Acme is like, what, €1,000, and the multi-clock is...
It was the only thing that was around at the time I got it, so yeah.
Yeah, and I think one of the guys who designed the multi-clock was part of the Acme company at some point, so they split. So I think there was something, but yeah, like for me, this was a total game changer, because I'm more flexible with the external chain, and I can still throw in samples, and it's pretty much, not always, always depending a bit on the CPU load or something, but I really enjoy the multi-clock, especially to go to work around latency issues, because I don't get it. I mean, we're flying to the moon, we do open heart surgeries, but we cannot fucking compensate latency. I mean, I'm getting emotional about it, because yeah, I don't get that. Why they cannot fix it, or why there is no algorithm that can do that. I don't know.
It's a topic that always arises on these talks, and also when I have people, and even there's some friends showing up in the chat, so we should say hi. For example, our friend Mike Rodhead from Berlin is asking a clock-specific thing. Where do you have your clock in the chain? Can you
Yeah, my Ableton is the master clock. Yeah.
Sorry?
I see it's gone now. But Ableton is basically the master now.
Okay.
Yeah. So I control everything through Ableton. If I press start, then everything starts to work.
Yeah, same for me. And I mean, the multi-clock does this like one round of actually generating the clock, right? Yeah. So you always have this. I mean, you can do a 360 reverse, and it kind of like starts at the beginning, but I think it should do this like one cycle to then start. But what I also sometimes do is I use the multi-clock as the master, because the clock is really precise and really tight. And it has this emergency loop. So should something with your computer happen, it goes into this emergency loop and just like keeps the clock running. I think that is, especially when you go live or when you perform live, it can save your life. And you can, in the meantime, you can restart your computer or whatsoever. But I prefer, like when it's about recording, in my case, Ableton is the master, and multi-clock just generates the jitter-free audio sample exact clock.
Yeah, so I guess it's the same for all of us. You too, Nene?
For me, it's when I'm playing live, it's only gear, and the clock is coming from the drum machine, going through the synthesizer, and from there to the modular synthesizer. And all the channels are in the mixer, and through auxiliary send some effects, and that's it. But when I'm recording, I'm sending the clock from the computer to the whole gear, and then recording like that. Because I like from while live playing, I had so much stress with having the computer and the interface around. I guess it's just for me more safe. It feels more safe to feel the hardware and play only with the gear and like trust the gear than trust the computer. I don't know why, but it just it just happened too many times that just computer crashed and stuff like that. So I'm just not I'm not feeling so comfortable with going to stage with the computer anymore.
Yeah, computers cannot be trusted.
Yeah, it's a little bit tricky. It's a little bit tricky. And it's also like more charming if the gear fucks up. It's more charming somehow. Like you can just like close, open, and it still has like this charming effect. But when computer is fucking up, it's not cute.
Yeah,
it's not cute.
No.
Yeah.
Which interface did you use on stage? If I'm a bit into like I think really interface to interface varies in how stable they are. Which one did you use?
I guess so. Motu. I had. Motu I had. Maybe it's also not trustable enough. I don't know. Also, the computer, the newer Ableton with this USB-C, it's also not working good at all. Like,
Don't get me started.
It's ridiculous. Like they say that it's better than normal USB, but actually, it's not. It's not. It's just causing so much problems. So, yeah, no, yeah, trusting the gear more. Definitely.
Can you tell us what your setup looks like? What?
I have. Wait, maybe I could.
You don't have to. Yeah, well, you can show us, of course. But I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sure. Okay.
Okay. I just show you. It's just like this. It's like a one bigger, one smaller, modular, 2 effect machines, and 2 synthesizers. I mean, 1 drum synthesizer.
Boss vocoder?
Yeah, the voice to voice thing. That's amazing. How are you using that?
I'm using it actually it has an amazing reverb, and it gives a little bit of crystals and harmonics on top when you put it on the right kind of sounds. Sometimes it also doesn't work. So it's just like trying out if it works. Never on the drums. I never do that because it doesn't work well. But for the synthesizers more.
Right, but I was actually. This is your live setup as well as your studio setup.
Yeah.
Ah, okay, wow.
Yeah. That's actually basically it.
Wow. Okay, so you travel with everything, or you just take some pieces and you leave others in the studio?
Depends on where I'm flying to, of course. If it's like if it's a place where I know that the flights are not I'm not gonna feel comfortable with going over 10 kilos because they're gonna weigh it and it's gonna be problem and stuff like that, then I don't take most of the gear, especially not the modular, the bigger case. I don't take it with me.
Right.
But if I feel more comfortable, because I'm Turkish person traveling around Europe, and they still like do this game with me, and so I am very careful. Also, like having not slept at all and getting into conversations about like the gear.
What is this for?
It's so hard. So I better leave it at home and have more relaxed brain.
What I was wondering, how are you all coping with the COVID period, with the lockdown, and how you can still get inspired?
Gentlemen.
I think I feel more inspired than ever, actually. I mean, personally, I've made more higher quantity and quality of music in the last 3 months than in the last 3 years, probably. I don't know. Yeah, you just have a lot of time that normally I'd be sleeping in, or I mean, I have a family as well, and it's taking care of the kids. And now I'm home in the weekend, so I can do more in the week. And also, I think my brain is a bit more like relaxed. I've slept a lot. My mind is also not set to making dance floor, peak time tracks all the time. which is something I tend to get stuck in a little bit when I'm traveling a lot, and I need stuff to play during my sets. So now I don't have any of that, so it's actually very inspiring.
That's a fair point, actually. I think when you are at home for more than just 4 days, or I don't know, when you're not like every weekend you're gone, I think you can really kind of like develop a studio mood and like really dive in and work on projects like more deeply than you maybe when you are leaving on a Thursday again and coming back on a Monday, or you're just like taken out of the flow. But on the other hand, I found it a bit, we had to sort out our shit, right? And I think because there's no certainty at the moment, we had to do like, administrative stuff in Germany, to get the government support and all that. It kind of like threw me personally off for a little bit to take care of, okay, so what is going on, and taking care of tax returns, and, you could pause tax and all that. So that for a little bit threw me off. But I feel that now that, how many months are we into this now? 3 months, 4 months?
Yeah, 3, 4.
I think somehow now I'm like, okay, so this is
something. It says something about the situation that you don't even know how many.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's like, okay.
Lost track of time.
I feel kind of like perhaps a bit more relaxed and like more like open and like arrived in a certain way in the studio, because you have, like Joris said, you have time now, and
I like what you're saying about going in a deeper studio vibe or a deeper studio mood. If you are traveling a lot and you only have 3 or 4 days to visit the studio in between gigs, you tend to feel you're wasting time if you were just noodling around for a day, or just exploring a synth, or trying something new, And if you right now, you can spend a week without actually recording something, but get a real clear picture of where you want to go, which is something which is as valuable as finishing something.
Exactly.
Or even not knowing where you're going or where you want to go, and just finding out along the way.
Yeah,
and it doesn't really matter, and it does.
I never wasting time in the studio.
Yeah,
it's always good for something.
Yeah.
Yes. And then,
I mean,
how you?
Actually quite the same. I mean, it's great to have the time, but it can also be such a burden also to have so much time. It's like so good, and at the same time also like the creativity at some point, or like the lust of doing something goes like slowly, like like this, because there is no input happening anymore. So it's really good and bad at the same time.
Yeah. You have to keep on motivating.
Yeah, it's very hard.
What I feel is when I after a gig and then I come back, I have inspiration, and now it's like the weekends and no gigs, and then and I mean always do the week I sit in the studio and make music, and but it's now like, okay, there's no other impulses or energies that give you that extra.
Yeah.
But
Or
in a way, it's also you can go deeper. You know? Make some time.
Sometimes sometimes I'm like starting and I'm thinking like, why even bother, or but sometimes I'm like, it just makes so much sense right now, this happening, it's so.
But do you all have your studios at home, actually? So I see Shinedoe has the studio. I guess that's your apartment, and Nene has it at home. Joris and Jochem are in it, because I have my studio also in. I mean, I have a little setup at home, and I have my main studio, which is not in my apartment. And I feel that it's like, you go to the studio. It's kind of like it's like a working day in a way. So you go there and you're kind of like there. So you produce music, you write music. But when I do something at home, I feel what Nene was saying. I'm like, so what is this for? Or you like, I'm hungry, or I want a coffee, and you go out. But when I actually go to my main studio, I am more obliged because I also want to use the time. So that's, and I always had my studio out, like not in my apartment. And I this kind of like created something like, okay, like a daily or like a, whenever you go, kind of like a routine that I really appreciate when going to the studio. So that's how I'm always forced myself to okay, now you're in the studio and now let's see what you can get going.
Yeah, true. It's more like going to work.
Yeah, exactly.
So, yeah. Makes sense.
In the chat, you're debating monitor speakers?
Yeah, there's some questions about what we all use for monitors, and
Also subwoofer.
I was giving Sander some hints in the private chat.
The private chat.
He's he's.
Oh.
Anyway. Let me check the private.
That's also
chat.
happening.
Oh shit! Oh my god.
Private.
Oh. Good that this one is private. Yeah.
Let's see. I think there's a lot of people commenting. Sorry, people, if we are ignoring you because we are so involved in this conversation right now.
So do you guys? The question: do you guys make different music as well now? Does it this time inspire you to maybe make things that are outside of the box, things that you made that you will never play in your live sets or your DJ sets or anything else, but are just coming from some kind of place?
Sure.
I'm always exploring, because for me it brings, if I'm doing no dance floor music, it actually in the end kind of like brings me back to something that is meant for the dance floor. But if I go off track into, whatever universe you want to go, I gain a lot of what I can actually do in maybe more dance floor focused tracks. So I need that kind of like balance, because just doing dance floor tracks, I would get really bored in a way.
Yeah.
And I would lose inspiration and so that's, I need that a lot. That the stuff that is just sitting on a hard drive that might never ever see the light, but it's crucial for the production process in general.
Oh, you make me curious.
There's a lot of stuff.
Why wouldn't it deserve a public live or public version? Or
I mean, not that it's not
even under a different name or something, or
it's maybe not even, it's I kind of like see these sections in my studio life as, sometimes it's learning and trying and experimenting around. And it's not meant to be released. It could be released, but it's just not, the purpose of that music is not for being released. It's like to try out and explore and discover, and then take elements of this learning process, this discovering process, into actually the music that is meant to be released.
Wow, okay. Well, to be honest, I almost think the opposite way, because I always find beauty in things that are not supposed to be something, or are not supposed. Yes, things that are made just with 100% genuine intentions, just an exploration or something which is made without any intention. I think that's usually a more direct brain to result translation than if you overthink something because it needs to be released and fit in a certain format or is geared towards a certain purpose or audience. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, the music I'm writing in the more like let's call it the learning process or the experimenting process. It could technically be released, but it's just a mindset how I treat that music, because I go from this stock of sounds, and I might pick something, or I might just pick an idea or a feeling, and then kind of like be in another stage in the studio, that what I have done without, like you said, without not like without caring about it, or without having in mind that this is something that I want to release, but it's here, and I use the energy or the purpose of these recordings to then actually incorporate into tracks that might see the light at some point. But I totally agree that when you have something that is totally innocent and it just happened, that can be very, very beautiful. And we're 3 people now.
There is something.
Nene is gone now.
She got bored by my spiritual excursion. She's like, fuck that shit, I'm out.
Well, she's
A toilet break.
And add this one.
Oh my God.
Yay!
She's back.
Nice and refreshing.
I could hear you, but I was out somehow. Can you hear me?
There's a Dutch word for this. Stoelen.
Yeah, we hear you. We hear
Okay.
you.
Musical chairs.
Yeah.
Sorry, I don't know what happened.
It's fine. You're back.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Sorry, continue.
I'm done.
Okay.
I'm out.
Yeah, I mean,
You know, I ruined it. I'm so sorry. I ruined it.
no, it's fine. It's fine.
Yeah,
No
I'm
worries.
actually interested in hearing about everyone else, how they make a distinction between the stuff you decide about releasing and the stuff you decide that to be shelved or something.
Shinedoe?
Yeah.
Because we all have
How I decide.
right? Yeah.
What do you say? Sorry?
I mean, we all have plenty of stuff that is sitting on the shelf or
Yeah.
sitting on a hard disk that we don't release. So, what is the thing that makes you shelve it, and instead of
Basically, how
sharing
I
with the
work, if I produce music, and I feel immediately if the track will work or not, and I try not to put it in a shelf because I don't want to have loads of unfinished music. So what I do, if it doesn't work at that moment, I throw it away. Sometimes I keep it, maybe 2 or 3 tracks, but that's the way for me to work. Like if I hear the track works, I feel it, then I know I'm gonna bring it out. And
but you
I
actually
feel it in my gut.
destroy the stuff you don't release, or do you keep it somewhere?
It's really rare. Then I really have to doubt, but I have a lot of music I delete.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's a
Because I
brave.
don't like to
Wow.
have. I just like
Hardcore.
if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. I just don't like to have piles of music, and
Yeah, you're right.
I like to work in the moment and the feeling what I have, and then and that's the way I work. And if I,
I
hear
guess
the
it really
track,
depends
it's
on
like,
It's
this
a great
is it.
attitude. Absolutely. Yeah.
Depends on the music as well, because what you say, if it doesn't work, but what does it or does it not work for? There's so many ways in which music can work.
True.
Yeah.
So I think any kind of music, it's either good music or bad music, and even that's debatable. But anything else, I think it's really interesting to keep sketches, because they might inspire you in a year, maybe in 5 years. You'll be like, oh yeah, that was actually
Yeah.
pretty good. You might pick it up again and make it a different version
Some.
or anything.
Some, but I really feel I'm really an intuitive person, and I feel when I hear a track, yes, this is it or this is not, and that is how that's how it works for me. And of course, you can keep a track. Maybe sometimes I have like, okay, this could be something, but I'm really a person like in the moment. I really have to feel it, and then I work on a track. The second day, third day, I listen to it. Do I still have the feeling? Yes. If I don't have the feeling, no, I don't work on it. If I work too long, 2 weeks on a track, then it's not
No.
going to
But
be.
working,
No.
but working on a track and having it on the hard drive there's this promoter in Germany. They put a compilation together, kind of like a fundraiser, and I went through my archive and I found a track which is maybe 5 years old, and I listened to it and I was like, well, this is actually something you could put out, and I send him that, and he released it. So I think sometimes you discover something in your archives you maybe have already forgotten about it, but then when it strikes back in a certain way, and it puts you, you know, you like, oh shit, I forgot about this track, but this track is actually good. But I like, I keep, yeah, I mean, I did a little cleanup on my studio computer the other day, and I trashed a lot of old projects, but they were, to be honest, they didn't serve any purpose than just like sitting around on a hard drive. And but sometimes you discover, I don't know if it's just a bass line or a lead synth or a drum, a kick drum, I don't know, you're like, oh,
Okay.
and then you take it,
Yeah.
you take that energy from 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years back into your contemporary mind, and I think you can profit a lot from something that you kept, and it just like a good wine that just like got a bit better than you
Yeah, I mean,
incorporated.
I mean, I understand that part as well, but for me, it's like, yeah, I mean, sounds. If I create sounds, I'm like, okay, that's cool. I can always use that. But I really feel like when it's, yeah, that, yeah, I really feel when the track is, yes, this works for me or not. I'm really,
I'm actually,
I'm really
I totally,
intuitive with that.
yeah, I totally agree, and I'm the same. The only difference that I have with you is that I just don't delete it. I mean, I like starting over with something 1,000 times more than going back to something that was already being recorded. So I don't go back to older tracks to see if I can breathe new life into it, or you know, sort of rescue it. Um, I would rather start something new, which is always a lot quicker and a lot more easy to deal with, and a lot more fun too.
Do you guys?
But I
Do you
don't
guys?
delete old stuff. It's just sitting there. It's just waiting for, I don't know, for my grandkids or something.
They're not gonna listen to it. They're not gonna do it. If you don't listen to it, they're not gonna
No,
do it.
that's true. Yeah,
Do you-
it's a romantic idea, but
Yeah. Do you guys also like listen to your tracks after they're done? Just like, you know,
never.
for me neither.
done, it's
Ever.
done.
When it's done, it's
Yeah,
done. Like it's like out of my zone. It's just like past. It's like past relationship is done. You just don't want to think about it.
Best relationship.
It's like it's
Yeah,
somehow even like you just don't like it anymore
Do
or
you-
something
do you
like
mean
that.
because
It's
you spend so much
crazy.
time with it.
Yeah.
Do you mean really putting on, let's say you finished an EP, putting on the EP to actually listen to it, or you mean like listening to it just because you need to learn something from it or something? Because I would never put on like an EP or a CD that I made.
Your own music,
in a million
and
years.
sit in the living room like, oh, this is great music. Nah,
I'm so good.
yeah.
But it's interesting
I think
it is interesting to see the development which you make. I mean, if I listen to stuff that I made many years ago and I listen now, it's so you know different. But every period, every year has a different phase, maybe a different state you were in or things you experienced,
Yeah.
inspiration. So sometimes I
But
like to
I
listen back. I was like, oh, I was in that period, but yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
But I
in
like
that
also what I like to hear also when I like listen to the first things I made, how much naivety it is in there, like how much of like, because those are the tracks that you do not to get into a label or not for a purpose, but you do just for because you have something to express and you have something to discover, and it's so exciting. And like when I hear that, it's also so raw and so wrong at the same time, but still such like a character it has, and it's like I like it. I like listening to the first things a little bit, like 1 minute of it, and then
Very quick
okay.
through it.
yeah.
But
I
it's
mean,
funny
I think-
because when you're making the music, you're listening to it like non-stop. You're listening again and again. And again. Like I'm doing this mixity at the moment, and it consists mostly of other people's music, which is great. And those parts I like the most. And then there's a part with my own tracks and I just made them on the fly while mixing. and those are the parts I want to skip the quickest. But listening to a mix CD when you're making it is actually really nice, because you can really get into the flow and you fine tune. I mean, I make a mix CD in Ableton. It's not like a DJ mix CD, so. Yeah, it's funny how you listen so much to music while you're making it, or an album or something. And then once it's done, it's done. Like throw it away.
Yeah, I think once it
the other
goes
people listen.
public, it's up to the others to like deal with it.
Yeah,
and,
it's a second
you know,
life. It's a second life. Yeah.
Exactly, because you brought it to life. You struggled with it. There's parts that no one cares about you, but it bothers you. I don't know, something that doesn't really sit right. But you were like, fuck, I don't get this. I don't get it tight. So you put it out there. But I think then, I don't know, a few years later, when you have this like when you're emotionally distant to that track, and then you listen back to it, I think you have your own new pair of ears in a way. That I did that the other day. I went through by accident. I went through my archive because I put together like a large folder and was like, oh, I did that, right? Oh yeah, oh yeah, right. That was this track and that was that track, and it kind of like, I totally forgot about them, but I like them in a way. I like what I did back then. So it kind of like, oh yeah, I know why I put this out. So it was kind of like, it was a nice going through your own archive. But once a new release is out, I'm done with it.
I guess we all agree on this.
Yeah.
It is sort of like being not able to spend more time on something and then just draw the line and saying, okay, I'm temporarily satisfied. You know, this is what it is. Move on to the next thing.
Now others judge.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And you guys actually, Joris and Jochem, you guys also have been doing a little bit of 4/4 to the floor kind of things.
You mean in the session today?
Yeah, or in general.
In the session today, we started 4/4, and then the last half hour was half speed dubby kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
that was really
and
nice.
actually that's musically the most interesting part, but probably not what Joris was looking for to do when he was coming here to do a track for his mix album. But we might do something with it. I don't know.
Amazing.
But it was fun to do. It was it just happened. But put the clock, everything in the clock on half speed, and then kind of reprogrammed some of the drums and synths, and then it became something completely different very quickly. So that was cool. And other than that, I must say, for myself, I haven't done any music with a preconceived idea. Basically, all music I do these days, in the last 4 or 5 years, is just I go in the studio, make music, and whatever happens, happens. Without thinking I'm going to do an EP for, with this style, or it's just stuff that happens. And whenever
that's amazing.
And whenever something happens that I really like, we cut it to vinyl, and that's it. And,
you cut the vinyl at how do you say it? Stoor?
Yeah. In this room, in the back, there is a vinyl cutting room, and
you cut it there.
Yeah,
that's pretty nice. I think that is
that's so nice.
That's a cool concept of like you create it at the spot, and you and then you can technically just walk out of the session with your dub plate.
It's bypassing all the steps that normally take place when you release something. So it's you basically, we all know the situation. You're making music, you finish it, then you look for a label, or you have your own label. You have to wait for the pressings. You have to get the artwork done. Somebody that you work with picks a date in the future because it needs promo, lead time, blah blah blah, and all that stuff. And then by the time it gets released, you're sick and tired of it, and you don't know anything.
How many records can you cut? Like in what is an edition of what, like 50, 100, 200?
Well, yeah, we do 50 max.
That's cool.
Yeah. 50. Sometimes less, but the 50 is the max that we do, because if it's more than 50, it would actually be cheaper to press it.
Yeah. How long does it take? Is it like real time
Yeah,
cutting?
it's real time. Yeah, it's one by one.
Wow. That takes time. So at 50 is, and it's something really special, you know. And
It is.
We actually discussed this last week in the knob Twiddlers thing. But the cool thing about this is you can keep on making decisions about the sonics and the characteristics of what you're doing up to the very last moment. Because cutting something is a process that introduces artifacts or effects or sonic changes, and those can be seen as factors you can decide about. So
Yeah.
you can keep on shaping the sound until it's actually there on vinyl, and the whole process towards it is just a accumulation of artistic decisions, and it's a really satisfying process to
yeah, I
finally
guess.
have the pressing with everything you've tried, you know, during mixing or during the producing and the cutting, to a point where you think, okay, this is the as good as we can get it, best version of what this idea is about.
Is this vinyl only, basically?
It's on all the stuff we do here at Stoor is streaming available on SoundCloud and YouTube.
Okay.
In full length without any.
But not on Bandcamp. You can't buy it.
If you want to own it, you have to buy the vinyl.
Okay,
You
exactly.
can listen, but if you want to own it, you buy the vinyl. Yeah.
Or you rip YouTube.
Yeah, or you just listen to it on YouTube. That's fine. If you want the high def quality of really well cut vinyl, you have to buy it. But
that's the thing. If you're saying that cutting the vinyl is part of the process, then you obviously can't really sell it digitally, or you would have to record the vinyl to get the final sounds.
There is a digital master for everything, which we put online, but, and it has a different character. It's almost the same, but the vinyl has the final sound.
Yeah.
The final.
Amazing.
The final vinyl. Did it influence like this? Basically, what is it? Real time, on demand, vinyl cutting. Did it influence the way you approach the writing process?
Absolutely.
Sonically, technically, or also in a creative way?
Both, because you have 12 minutes for an optimal type sound. So you stay away from making 20 or 25-minute tracks, which is very rare anyway. But I think the most important thing it introduces is there is no the only how do you say it, the only criterion is whether you like the music or not. So there's no criterion, is this mixable, is this good for in a club, is this an A-side track or a B-side track? That's all out of the window. Because you're not cutting for that audience. It's you're basically making music that you want to keep and share.
It's almost
and,
like therapy.
and sell.
Like therapy, basically.
Well,
I think this is a really interesting.
If you have your tracks that you make on an EP for a label, whether it's your own label or somebody else's label, you introduce restrictions because you have to sell at least your 500 or 1,000 copies to even recoup. And we don't. If we sell 5, it's fine. You know what I mean?
Fine.
Yeah.
I think that puts a lot of like how would you call it, innocence to
freedom.
Yeah, creative freedom, innocence in a way. You're like, okay, this is it.
It's you just make music, and whenever you have this moment in the studio when you get this goosebump moment, that's the only criterion. That's the only criterion. Whether it's dubby or it's noisy or it's danceable or not, or just some crazy thing that just is really interesting. That's the only criterion. It's fine, cut it, done.
But you cut it out of I don't know, like a 3, 4, 5 hour long jam session. You cut parts out of it, and that makes it on the vinyl, or is it is it actually tracks that you shape and create like you would?
I was gonna ask that. Yeah.
It comes
Because
together it comes together during a jam. And you know how you jam yourself or you make tracks yourself. You have something going in a loop, or you have something repetitive, and you tweak it until you have like this aesthetic that you like, the sound you like, the way the instruments work together. That's the moment you decide, okay, this is the basis for something I want to finish or continue with.
And then you play it.
Then you just basically. The way I work is usually I try to find all the variations, all the possibilities within that setup, within that, just to find out about the range of the track. If you know what I mean. Just see from where it goes. What is the range? What can you do to make it interesting? And once you find a few combinations, it can either be the end result could either be a combination of some moments during the jam, or it can be a moment where everything flowed really nicely for about 6, 7, or 8 minutes, and then just top and tail it, and maybe make an intro or an outro. Sometimes it's as simple as just fade it in and fade it out, and other times it's something which is a bit more produced or just.
But you jam multi-track anyways, right?
Yeah.
So technically, you can edit it.
Yeah,
you can edit it.
Yeah. Do you edit some? Do you edit? Do you cut some out and like?
I don't. It's not a dogmatic process. It's just a way to generate quick material. It's just a quick way of working, because if you record 4 or 5 hours, usually there's 4 or 5 tracks in there.
Oh yeah, that's a good ratio.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and then some stuff that, and then I'm a bit easily bored, so I go for the ones that are almost done. And that's what I choose for being the end results, or the ones that end. Maybe I listen to it a few days later and just ditch some of them, just distill it until I find the ones that are really lasting and relevant.
Distill is actually a very nice description of the process you're doing there. I think you can really like condense and distill it, and then you just technically an hour later you have it in your hands, and I think that is a really pure moment. And I mean, yeah, like you said, when you have a commercial release on your own or on another label, there is definitely a few months involved from okay, this is the music, and when it hits the stores, that's why I mean Blauan, for example, he has one of these cutting machines as well. I don't know
he's
which
got the same one. Yeah, he's got the same one. Actually, I talked to him about this last week.
And he can cut it, take it to his next gig and play it out, and maybe it makes it on a, let's call it a commercial release or not, but I mean, we could technically also do that with, files and play it.
Do you play these tracks in your sets?
Sometimes, not very often. I don't like to play my own music in
Me neither.
my sets. Very rarely do.
What I'm curious about is the mix down. Do you, because you're jamming, do you also the same time focus on the mix down?
On the go.
That it sounds the levels, because I can imagine when I'm doing the modular and patching and everything, and I'm in the zone.
Because we did it today, like I just described, and maybe you can talk about it, because for me it's also
what I've seen. Today was super interesting watching. I mean, you guys should all come here one day and spend the whole day with Jochem in the studio. You'll learn a lot. And all together.
Yes.
Yeah, I love to.
And what I love is how patient he is, and how he just lets things happen and flow, and he just plays around with a little bit here and there. Then you end up with these couple of hours of music, multi-track, and then he's going to hand that over to me, I guess, and then I don't know what to do with it. But I'll find out. I only have a couple of minutes that I can use for my.
No, but Shinedoe was interested in how the leveling. Works.
Of course.
Yeah, because
I think basically what happens is that it's all live, and he uses filters that have like big spikes because he has a huge resonance on top of it.
Mm.
So he records everything at a very conservative level. So there's just not going to be any clipping, but there's a lot of level differences, So
Yeah.
that's you need to do some very serious mixing, I assume. Sometimes the kick is very hard in the mix, very loud. Sometimes you change the kick, and so what I imagine doing with this material is going back into the studio and listening to it, taking bits and pieces that are like, and then just remix the whole thing. Try to EQ maybe some bits that needs like the frequency ranges. There's not done any like no mixing choices have really been made other than just a level.
Yeah, the level is basically happening while you are jamming, because there is already the way the recordings turned out. There's already like a blueprint for the mix, because you level things on the ear while it's playing, and so I don't make any adjustments in the DAW or in the recording. So all the levels are set basically on the machines going into the computer. So you already get like, it's not the technically the most proper way to record it, because some of it gets recorded like minus 20 dB or something. And
But in the end, I don't know. I think this doesn't really matter,
like,
right?
If you talk to like really dogmatic engineers, they would say you have to record it a few dBs louder, to get I don't know, the perfect ratio between whatever. But yeah, that's not. It's not the
but
music.
I think that's part of it, right?
Yeah, but the music is not suffering from it, so that's the way I work here.
Yeah. So basically, you adjust during the jam session. You okay? It's too loud. You immediately adjust it.
I think, right? Did you do that? Like adjust the levels
on the machines, yeah, but not in the
No.
Oh, okay.
In the recording.
Okay. Yeah. You keep
But
a
I mean,
bit of a
I don't
headroom.
change the input levels in the recording. It is just the output level of a synth or a chain that is going into a channel.
I mean, I guess
do you have some
guys...
kind of limiters?
No,
just purely coming in.
Yeah,
no compression, no compression either.
Sometimes preamps or mixed how do you say, the channel strips and stuff like that going into the computer, but some of it is going straight in without any treatment. Some of it is going through a channel strip, or so you have some access to EQ or gain and whatever. Depends on what the instrument is and how it sounds going into the computer. So usually there's a chain going on before it hits the input of the computer.
And I mean, it's not the first time that you guys are writing music, right? So you are in a room that I believe sounds good, right? And so you're doing a line check. You're mixing on the fly.
Exactly.
I mean, you're not boosting the low end to the max and like hitting the red and like make the interface clip. I mean, you are mixing in a certain way, which might technically be not the perfect way that a book would tell you to how to mix it and how to record it, but you have a feeling to it. And I think these are very often when I because I do this when I write music, I'm kind of like already parallel to the creative process to the mixing process in a way.
Yeah.
I do compression, I do EQing on like parallel to it. And then I have kind of like a rough cut, like a rough mix. And very often when I then decide to mix it down, I do not use the mix down I was trying to like get perfect. I'm like, no, actually I like the rough cut much more because it has more of this
The
feeling.
demo syndrome.
And then the approached mix downs are actually very important because then you're like, no, I think I like the early version. So I very often I spend a whole day mixing this track, but I'm not using what I just did. I use the old version.
Question to all of you: do you mix for technical accuracy or for vibe? Do you mix on
Both?
For technical accuracy or
like the way it's supposed to sound, the way it's supposed to sound, or for vibe? Like even if it's technically not accurate. Maybe too
Right.
much, like a kick with no attack, or just stuff which is not
Both.
done.
I do both, yeah.
Ah,
Both.
yeah, okay.
Vibe, and it also has to sound good. Basically, the ears. I mean, I use my ears. That is I don't follow rules or whatever. As it sounds good, then yeah. And the vibe, both. Yeah.
Yeah. That's exactly the thing. What I meant. Sometimes when you try to mix something technically correct, the whole vibe of the track
Exactly.
falls into
Yeah.
parts, and because
Yeah.
there is this one resonance maybe, or this whatever, the inaccuracy that
Yeah.
actually is the backbone of the track,
Yeah,
and you're
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
and then it's like it's
100%.
gone. And,
Yeah. This is also like why I'm struggling with, like, if the labels are trying to send your music to someone else to mix them, it's very tricky, because they will cut off these frequencies that
you like.
mean so much to you. They mean so much to you, and all of a sudden they're gone because someone thinks that they're wrong, but actually for you they're not wrong. They're supposed to be there. So
I mean, that also makes a difference to, I think, a mixing engineer that is kind of like a passive entity that is like, okay, I think I know what she was trying to approach, and I keep the overall vibe, but there are some things that maybe can actually highlight what you were trying, to achieve, I don't know, like a higher dynamic range, or whatever. But same with mastering, when they get too creative in a certain way, I think that's at least my opinion, that's not what should be there, or what is not the job of an engineer, because you spend time shaping the sonic aesthetic of a track, so why do they take that away? That's not the purpose, I think.
also, when you listen to these old records, like where the people didn't have the capacities that we had, but they still sound sick. So
yeah, they sound like that. They sound that sick because they are so maybe imperfect. I mean, I listened to
raw, and
I listened to Speedy's Panic earlier today, right? And I don't know, that was actually a question I had in mind, because I was like kind of like preparing with like everyone's kind of like vibe and all that.
Ooh,
and I
you
was
did
like,
research.
oh yeah, of course, because I think that vibe of this track. I don't know if people might look it up on YouTube or something, but this is a really raw and like honest and straightforward. Would you be able, or would you approach I mean, I don't know how you recorded that track back in the days, but would you approach that project the same way today than you did back in the days?
No, absolutely not. But that's true for everything. I think we all do. If you do something, that's what we touched on this earlier. You draw the line at some point, and then you are temporarily satisfied, and you move on to the next thing. If you would go back to it a year later, you would ditch certain things and approach things in a different way, because that's the look on it that you have at that point, and I think that changes all the time.
But could you technically, like in a technical sense, do a track like Panic, but written in 2020?
I still own all the equipment that I used to do that track, so I guess I could, but I wouldn't.
It's like
would not?
1997.
Why would you not? Why would you not?
Why would I have been there? Done that?
That's true. That's a fair point. That's a really fair point.
Yeah.
It's like 97, right?
Panic?
Is it
Yeah.
1997?
Yeah, around 97. Yeah.
I kind of asked the same question.
I was actually more into the other side. Panic is the B side.
Panic is the B side.
Yeah.
Oh.
I was always a big fan of G-Spot's Jeroen's album.
Yeah.
And I still am to this day. Actually, for my fabric mix, I licensed one of the tracks on there. And I asked him, like, because I know he does a lot more like less melodic things nowadays. So I was wondering, like, is that something you would ever go back to? What did you say again? It was.
I don't know. I don't.
I don't think you
isn't
thought it
that-
was an interesting question.
I mean, isn't that true for all of us? I guess if you once you are
You
done
did
with
it.
the track,
Yeah.
why would you ever try to do the same thing? That's not what it's about. I mean,
Yeah.
for
But
me,
there's
it's really-
13 years in between. Is it 13 years? It's no, how many?
23.
23 years ago.
23.
Dude,
So
you make me
so so wouldn't it be, sometimes could it bring something to your approach these days that you were like, using, or like the techniques or equipment that you were using back in the days, and the approach of writing music like Panic, and you would take that into 2020, could that give something to your 2020 alter ego in a positive way, even though you have been there before and you did that, and you are somewhere else, but take this 23 years back vibe and do.
No, I'm not,
No?
dude. I'm not absolutely. I hate looking back. I'm gonna say something really hardcore. Techno is not about the past; it's about the future.
Exactly.
I mean, that's true.
No,
But you
it-
have-
It's interesting that you bring this up, but I get also often tracks, tracks that's been a hit, been a classic or whatever, and people still want you to make the same thing, but
Yeah.
that was that moment. You move on and you discover other things. You don't want to always make the same track like you did before, and understand that people love that sound, but as an artist, you want to develop, find new inspiration, and don't stay stuck in the same, in the same sound.
exactly.
That's how I see it.
Yeah, but you basically sum it up. I think the most motivation, the biggest motivation for me, and I guess that's true for everybody who is dealing with me making music as a career or even as a serious thing in your life. It's about the exploration. It's not really about doing one thing really well. It's about trying to find out what else you can do with your skills, and maybe go on a journey, find out what, if I go into this direction, what would happen if I go in that direction. How would it turn out? Or it could be something which is very conceptual, like designing a system, or doing a conceptual thing from the start, and see what happens, because it's always going to bear your signature anyway, because it's you doing it. But I don't think it's fun and even possible to do the same thing twice. I mean, let me give me an example. If we all have the situation where you are working on something and then you get a crash, right? You lose the work that you just done, and you were really into it, and you were like, oh shit, what is easier? Is it easier to trying to recreate the exact same thing, or is it just better to just say, okay, fair enough?
Something new.
Yeah, something new.
Yes.
But
I guess
think
it's the second one, right? It's
it's the second one, but
because you lose the whole excitement. You lose the excitement of the moment, and that's what it's about. Music is basically just using your voice with equipment, and if you don't get the excitement of the performance or the heat of the moment, then it's just going to be shit.
Yeah, but you would take, let's say your project crashes, but none of us would be completely wiped in the brain. You would automatically kind of like refer to what you have done like a few minutes ago. You would
you can retain the excitement and use it in something else, but to recreate the exact same thing,
that's
it's way harder than just ride on the wave of the excitement and start something new.
Yeah, but when I asked you about Panic, I was not kind of like thinking of that you could replicate that, but I was more speaking about the vibe of this track, the kick drum, like the driven sound, the reverby sound. Not copying you. I mean, that is you did, like you said, you did that. You've been there, but the approach to it, the vibe to it, the color of the track, the feel of it. That's what I more meant. Not that
You're talking about the aesthetic more than
yeah,
the
yeah,
music.
but the aesthetic is a 1997 aesthetic, for sure, because you were approaching it with the technical equipment you had back then. Now, fast forward 23 years later.
I'll tell you something funny. I've used the first period of the lockdown time to go through all the DAT tapes and old CDRs and backups and everything, and see if it was still readable. And luckily, most of it was. But I found a lot of original recordings, unmastered ones, and they sound from the CDs and DAT tapes. They sound more natural and even more defined than the mastered versions that came out on the vinyl and CDs. So what you were saying, all the stuff that was released on, for example, Warp and Nova Mute, was mastered by a certain mastering engineer, and they did have their sound, and some of the equipment they used back in the day were
Gave the touch.
very early A to D converters with very sort of infant technology.
Chips.
Yeah, and they actually downgraded the sonics of the music. So I found a lot of recordings like from the Panic time you're talking about, that sounds way more hi-fi and way
Oh wow.
more defined and way more defined and more fidelity than the recordings that you were
That's
talking about.
interesting.
Yeah, so if you would master it, if you would master that original recording with the mastering technology of today, it would actually sound like a 2000 track or 2020 track instead of a 1990s track.
That's interesting.
I think what I do notice nowadays is that music sounds very different than 25 years ago. I feel the vibe of techno is very different. There's a lot of people are using modular synths, which creates very different music than when you use a JV 1080 or a D50 or a 303 or a 909. It's much more organic in a way and linear than the 90s, where I feel a lot of music, of course, many exceptions, and there was a lot of linear music as well, but there was also a lot more written music. Nowadays, I feel music is not really written. Techno is not written. It's just made. It's generated with the help of equipment, but no one's really, or not so many people are actually writing anything. It's just sounds and things, and I think that's a very different approach than which leads to totally different music than in the 90s.
But is the technicality or like the equipment somehow then the driving force of all this? Because I was thinking about,
I think so.
I have it right in front of me, the Electron equipment. I think what was the Roland series, the TR series back in the days, defining a techno sound, is what the Electron machines are doing in the, I don't know, since when are they out there? Because the kick drums are the kick drums of an analog rhythm, and I think that puts techno or electronic music been made with these machines already into a core set of what these instruments make us do with it. That was always my approach. I try to own the machines instead of the machines own me.
Yeah.
And kind of like I mean, obviously these are the bases we have. This is the sonic, the source, but they're not guiding my process. I'm guiding the process, and I do things that people maybe would not do, but that kind of like shapes the sound. And very often I think people are using the stock sounds of the machines, and then like what you said, they just fabricate, and you used the term that was actually pretty accurate, instead of writing a track. And I think that comes with the technicality and the format and the vision of where should be played in a way. That's why I also think it is good to do something that is not meant for the dance floor. It is good to go a totally different path and then at some point later come back to something that, yeah, by accident is a dance floor track where you maybe was not intending to go.
I think it's really personal, because what for someone is means writing, it means different for someone else, and it's a very music to create to make music is such a personal thing, and it's all very difficult to even judge about it because it's an emotional thing. And the beauty is what you said about that you are the one who's shaping the sound, and not machines. How you say that?
Shape yours,
We
yeah.
go the other way around.
Yeah.
That is the beauty, that you can create something and how you say that, have a certain ideas or vision or inspiration. So it's really talking about music. Basically, I don't like too much to talk in details about music because it's so personal, and it's about emotion and about feelings, and it's about what happens internal but also external. And it's to grasp it in words, it's very how you say that? It's very personal.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very personal.
Yeah.
But on the other
Because
hand, I
each
mean,
have a different process. Each person has a different process, a different way of working. And of course, interested to talk about the technical side because interested to see how people work and how to make everything work. But at the end, it's the feeling and the emotion, and
But I don't think it really matters actually how you make the music. I think it's very interesting from many ways. But I think what's also very important is the final listening experience, because that's the one thing that lasts in the end.
Do you guys like? Do you listen to some type of music to get inspired from it before playing? Do you do something like this, or do you, Joris?
Listen to music before doing a DJ
yeah,
set, you mean?
listen. No, not a DJ set. Like
making music.
Making music. Do you take some kind of inspiration, or do you like purposely go listen to some person?
Actually, no, not really. But there's a lot of music that does inspire me when I'm listening to it. When I'm like, yeah, wow, this really sounds amazing. And it's usually not necessarily techno music. I don't know. I'm a bit retro sometimes. My big love.
He's laughing out loud.
I grew up in the 90s listening to. I grew up in the 80s, but I started listening to electronic music in the 90s, and I still think the best time in for me personally in music has been 94, 90 till 96, 97. I think the music has a lot of tactile. There's a lot of warmth in the music. People mastered by that time their odd instruments. Everything sounds so much better than when it was made in 91. And I think for me, there's a lot of inspiration because there's really a lot of layers in the music, and you can define each layer. And for some reason, this is something I really like as well. I think in music nowadays, like everything is very blended. It's hard to hear what's coming from where. There's a lot of processing going on, which I find really amazing as well. But when I find it more difficult to latch onto that kind of sound, where to be like, oh yeah, that sounds really amazing, because it's gone before before you can even identify what you're listening to. That's one answer. I think another answer for me would be that I'm working on this new mixity, which is there's more than 100 tracks I think in there. That's because for me it's very boring to just mix one track into the next and then have 12 tracks in the end. That's something that I don't find any inspiration. But what I've been listening to and been using a lot for my mix is a lot of ambient sounds, droney stuff, a lot of like dry beats. I think someone like Rico, for instance, is an amazing artist who has very like layered percussive and minimal sounding tracks. A lot of artists I've just discovered through this whole process, just taking things from here and there. And I think it has it has also inspired me personally to make music kind of on top of that sometimes, and then I kind of make music for a specific part of the mix, and that becomes something. This has been a bit of a new way of mixing, but that's as far as I would say. It would be me listening to other people's music to get into the mood. What about yourself, Nene? Nene, what?
Actually, quite the same. I mean, I have also. It depends on like what I am at that moment searching for, and sometimes my brain thinks more analytically. Then I'm more like into analyzing and trying to understand what the person is doing. But sometimes I'm more in like I'm more into the feeling of it, and try to maybe even imitate the feeling of it, but in different kind of genre maybe, and just get inspired of either the sound or the character of something. Because sometimes if I feel lost, these artists, they can also like give me some kind of direction or like some kind of motivation back into what I'm doing.
Yeah, I think that's something that people who are not working with music for a lot of their time find hard to grasp. You know, that aesthetics from something which is a totally different genre can be applied to something totally across another genre, or an aesthetic or a feeling or a mood or an emotion. And even across disciplines, I would say, not necessarily only from music to other music, but also to, from visual arts or whatever forms of expression there are to music, and the other way around. So yeah, instead of listening to music to get inspiration for your own music, doesn't necessarily always have to be like that. It could also be something which is completely from a different discipline or a different art form, or another thing that happens in your life, whatever. It's it can be transposed or transferred to music or audio. I think it's all interchangeable.
But that would all go in a certain sense of like more subconscious, I think, because I personally try to avoid listening to, I don't know, techno before hitting the studio, because I don't want to be biased in a certain way. Because I think, I mean, you can have references, but how fast becomes a reference actually not a copy, but you maybe it's too much. It's too big of a reference, right? So
something can be a technical reference without ever being a copy.
Yeah,
it could just be finding out about the acoustics of a room, or it could be something about a level of something, a level of a certain instrument, or
some sort of reverb, or
just like
some sort of
like a technical, just a technical reference.
yeah.
I think I don't think it's wrong to get inspired though. So I think it's really good to get inspiration from other people's music. But what I always, sometimes I'm like, oh wow, I wish I would have written that track, or something really inspires me, and then maybe I do hit the studio. Or actually, when I'm listening to music or watching a movie and I hear something and I'm in the plane, I just like turn off the movie and I start making music. But very quickly, within minutes, like it's already something else, So it starts somewhere. And then and I think that's an amazing thing too, where you might think that you're going to do something almost like a copy of something, but your brain just works differently, and that's what's great about creativity, is that it goes really fast. And you can just take so many turns, and you will take so many turns, because that's how you actually create music.
But I think you have to be you have to be aware of the process, because if you are unaware of the process of the like inspiration and stuff, then you can use what you said, like an inspiration, in a way that your music is benefiting from it. But when you, I mean, well, that's a bit hard to describe, but why do people, I wouldn't say they do it on purpose, but sometimes you're like, okay, this is a copy of something, right? This is a copy. How does that actually happen? Because for me, in my process, something like a copy could never happen because it's all original material. Yeah. Is it sampled? Is it like straight up, just like, okay, I do it exactly like that. I have this reference track. I do, I copy the sounds, or is it accident? That's what I'm often wondering about. Sometimes when it refers, when you're like, oh, this sounds like ba 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 ba. Right? Is it inspiration, or is it a clone or a ripoff? I don't know.
The thing is, for instance, when you're studying composition in a conservatory, you're also supposed to imitate the composers that are before you, before making your. There is a lesson for this. Like, this is basically like you take the Bach inventions, Johann Sebastian Bach. Okay, cool. You take the inventions, you first of all note all of the notes that he wrote, and then you kind of do your own interpretation from it. So it's like a Bach piece that you made yourself. So basically, it's also the imitating, like it starts from imitating. So in the beginning, honestly, I also didn't see anything wrong with it for learning process, to be able to analyze the sound and try to imitate, like, how can I make this happen? But any time that I tried also to make like a perfect imitation, it never worked. I always landed at another place where it didn't sound like the original thing at all, which was also actually kind of like fail in the end, because I couldn't. Yeah, it was like I failed ripping it off. It's just like,
yeah. I mean, you're talking about exercises that can be helpful in doing the thing that you're eventually after, and that is finding your voice.
Yeah,
that is the thing that we're all looking for. We're all finding our voice, and you can do it through finding inspiration in other people's music, or even other people's aesthetics or whatever. But eventually, what you are looking for is your version, your variation on something that is. I mean, none of us have invented music, right? I mean, it's all
exactly.
It's all like standing on the shoulders of the people who came before us. And making your own interpretation and finding your voice to express yourself. I think that's the thing we're all doing in the end, right?
The nice thing what you say about the voice, because finding your voice, for me, to produce music was like, oh, I'm missing a voice. So for me, it was like I need to put my voice in it, because I'm missing voice. I'm missing my voice. So it was not like I had to. It was more an urge to let the people know, the world, the listeners, that there's also a different sound. My urge
Your
was not
sound.
like to sound like, for example, Jeff Mills, or like Speedy J or Joris Voorn, but just to have a Shinedoe identity. It may sound different, and maybe people won't understand, or they do understand, but it was like, okay, this is my voice out there, to add something, to get, how you say that? To add another voice, something different, but still in electronic music. Huh?
Yeah, I think in the end that's we're all doing that. I mean, I think
let's say hi to Colleen, and she's a good point. Failed copy is innovation.
Yes.
True, there's truth in that, for sure.
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah.
What I think is really interesting in music history, I know Joachim likes to look at the past, the future, and not in the past. But if you listen to I was sitting in the car the other day, and we were listening to Spotify, and then I was like, I was telling my wife like, oh, I think this track must have been made in '91, and he's like, oh, how do you know? And I'm like, oh, I think it's because of the way the drum programming is done. And then she's like, oh, what about this track? And I'm like, oh, I think that's '87. And then we did like 5 tracks or something, and then I was all right. Not to say, I'm not trying to brag, but what I mean is that there's always a zeitgeist in music. Maybe now there's less of a zeitgeist than there was at the time when, for instance, musical equipment was innovated. For instance, if you take all the Roland stuff, which was always so influential, every single time there was a new Roland piece. I don't say this because I was around, but I can listen back to that. These pieces of equipment were used in a certain way by everyone, basically. And then there was something else, and that led to another kind of sound. And everyone was listening to everyone else, and everyone just made it a little bit different. And this is kind of how things evolved. Maybe nowadays there's so much stuff, and there's nothing that really makes one sound. So, and everyone is using everything mixed. Even we together, we use like basically only old crap. But I think this has always been very dominant and very important in music history. And then it's not a problem when something sounds like something else. It's just it's a zeitgeist, which is a beautiful thing as well. And also people want to be able to understand the music. That's also very important, that people are used to something. So if something else sounds a bit like it, but it sounds a bit different as well, then it's interesting. If it sounds completely out there, you're probably going to have a smaller audience that's going to be able to relate to it. And if it's an exact copy of something else, then no one will appreciate it. So there's a very interesting balance.
Talking
It's
about
also-
old
yeah.
crap, actually, is there any new crap that is striking you these days, going to kind of like a more knob twiddler kind of situation? Is there any piece, any gear, any manufacturer? We spoke about modular, but is there anything that is like not a Roland, not a Juno, not a Jupiter, not whatsoever a Pro One?
I think this is the golden age for new equipment right now, for new hardware. I don't think there's been any time
that is more.
Yeah, when there's been more variation and more innovation and new things than in the last 7 years. And it's only been increasing for the last couple of years. It's crazy. There's so many new things, so many new pieces of gear, approaches, small manufacturers taking big risks and chances and doing completely out of the box projects. I think that it's a really good time if you're into hardware. This is fucking crazy. It's a golden age, absolutely.
Is there anything that really sticks out in this like hardware
No,
jungle?
you answer the question. You answer the question.
I answer the question.
Yeah.
Well, I have to be honest that I started looking into the box recently a lot, because I set up a little corner here in my apartment, and I couldn't bring all the gear from the studio, so I'm enjoying a lot of plugins actually these days. Yesterday I got, for the first time, I got Push from Ableton. That is just a sequencer, obviously, but it allows me to do something that I haven't done before. So I kind of like find inspiration in the digital VST and sequencer world at the moment, because I have exposed myself to hardware quite a lot. I mean, I would say that I have a special connection to also older machines. I like the 606 a lot, obviously 808, and but at the moment I am very impressed by the digital sphere these days, because that's an approach I haven't really looked into. That's why I feel really inspired by this, and that's also lockdown driven. I had to.
So name one of your new secret weapons then. I want names.
I mean, it's also a replica actually, but it's the GeForce Oddity 2. That's a VST I'm really enjoying these days. It's like a super fat. What is it? Is it an ARP clone or whatever?
Right.
GeForce?
The GeForce, the Oddity 2. That one I really like. It's super. It's like it's a really cool synthesizer, and I like drum kits. The Max drum kits, I like them a lot in Ableton, and it's perfect with the push, and that's what I have been digging into the past 5-6 days.
I think it really depends also on the kind of music that you make. If it's really because all these VSTs, they can make almost anything as well these days. Even if you just use a Juno emulation, you can put like a million effects on it, and it sounds like nothing within a few minutes. Nothing like a Juno. For instance, I'm using the Arturia V collection quite a lot these days, which are
That's
all
nice.
replicas of the classic instruments, and they're amazing. But if you listen to all their own presets, they're out of this world. They're like completely nothing like something the original machine could even do. So I think there's a lot of interesting things that can be done in the digital world that where it almost doesn't really matter, like unless you're doing some really weird glitchy stuff that that needs to come from some kind of strange digital source. But yeah, these VST things nowadays.
It's good
great.
shit out there.
Yeah, but it's a lot.
Yeah, it's too much.
Sometimes the danger is because there's so much out there that you can get lost, and lost in a way because there's so much. And sometimes if you limit it or focus on
It's
one or
better.
two, then you get more creative. Then yeah.
I think also they're too complicated often. Like it's just too many. Yeah, there's too many things you can press and sliders, and
Yeah.
because you can't touch them with your hands, you have to do it with your mouse. So
Yeah.
I lose interest very quickly in trying to understand Jupiter 8 or the ARP 2600 on as a VST because it's too complicated.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
I'm curious about how many hours you spent in the studio, because, I mean, it's so much fun, but it sometimes takes a toll on the physical level. Sitting for hours or watching the screen for hours, your eyes get tired. I recently bought a glasses for the blue light.
Nice.
And yeah, I mean, I noticed now many years. I mean, back in the days, I spent like 8 hours. I could sit sometimes 7, 8 hours without, really, but behind the screen. So I noticed physical problems like, sitting muscle pain, or the posture. You're like sitting, with the mouse, or
You gotta stand up.
for me,
Yeah.
You
yeah,
gotta
stand
jam
up.
standing.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
in the long run, then
Yeah.
you adjust, like taking breaks or work out. Yeah, so I'm curious how.
I think today we didn't really spend any time at the screen.
No,
Is it the most time we spend on the screen?
I think, yeah, as far as this place goes, there is no fixed position. You're always walking around, getting, plugging things and getting
Mhm.
gear, lugging gear around. So I don't think that's. I spend lots of hours here, and I'm never in the same position for more than 1 minute. So it's
Yeah.
not, it's more like it's almost I would say it's a physical job, but there's a lot of moving around. And today Joris came. He requested, or not requested, but he talked about how can we get this particular sound of this blah 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 old record, and I happen to know how that was made, and it was done with one of these old Wavestation AD module, units. That's basically the Wavestation without the keyboard, which had audio inputs, and I still own one, and it's sitting in the bottom of one of the racks here. So I stepped in front of this machine in a
Wow.
in a like lotus position with a lamp like this, because
Okay.
the display was giving
That's so
up.
nice.
So I was like
Yeah.
down on the floor for like half an hour trying to program this thing. But that happens all the time here. You can walk around everything. You can go behind every rack, every thing that's here. So it's a very physical
That keeps
experience.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But how do you
And
do
then-
that with the sound? If I may interfere with the question, how do you have multiple speaker pairs
Yeah,
set up?
there are multiple speakers, but the main ones, that's pretty much the ones I always use for everything. They carry the sound pretty much throughout the whole room.
Oh wow.
They're
That's
like
good.
the big size PMCs, and then there's the 21-inch sub. An
So
Adams
you have
sub.
a good sound anywhere in the
Yeah,
room.
it carries pretty much throughout the room, and it's in between. It's basically mastering grade replication, but if you play it loud, if you're more back in the room, it feels like a small
Wow.
PA. But it's
Do you,
not
do you
loud.
do you play it out loud, or you more like
Not,
producing
not
in
even
like
that loud.
It's not loud, but it
good
doesn't really
volume?
matter where you are in the room. You can still get a very good picture of what you're actually doing. So you don't have to be in one sweet spot and the rest of the room sounds like shit. It sounds
Terrible.
pretty much the
Yeah.
same throughout the whole. It's like
Yeah, that's
Wow.
perfect.
30 meters from
That's nice.
there to behind, and
Mm.
you can kind of get it everywhere without totally misguessing what's going on.
I like recording in club volume. I need that.
It's not club volume, but it has body. You know,
Yeah.
it's not weak. It still has a body to it. Yeah.
Yeah, because that is often what I think is a bit of a, when you have a big studio with a lot of gear, you're like walking to that one end and you're like, yeah, but now I don't really get the vibe anymore.
Yeah.
So you go back and then you're like, then you need to go back to the other side. So
Yeah.
I think the acoustic situation in a large place like you have, because I was wondering, maybe you have like different like monitor settings on the mixing board, that like on a band, for like on a stage for a band, for example.
Yeah,
that
I
you
have a
can-
matrix switcher where I can switch between 3 pairs, but pretty much the only other 2 pairs, they are basically only used for reference. So the main ones are the ones that are always on, and if I want to really quickly just switch to a different
the
reproduction,
pair. Yeah.
yeah, I can, but it's just for a few seconds or maybe a few minutes, and then I switch back to the main
Back
pair.
to the main ones.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
What about you, all you? Do you have
Yeah.
how do
Nene?
you monitor?
Oh, monitor. Oh.
Yeah. I mean, how do you judge what you're doing? Do you
Oh, I
do you have
still was with the question about how you
Surviving long
yeah, in
sessions.
the studio
sorry.
That's also,
hours.
yeah, we
So I
have
was
two
really
questions
curious.
now.
Yeah, I was curious.
We have
yeah,
two
Nene,
questions.
how do you
So, first answer to the first question. What was it? About the health thing. So, if I do a lot of yoga
So you're like,
normally, even though I haven't done it since a month. I haven't done it. I've been lazy, but normally I do yoga. So physically I'm okay with it, but mentally, sometimes I can focus only 1 hour. Then it's only 1 hour. I have to accept the way it is, and I don't like. I used to push a lot, but I realized that it's psychologically affecting me a lot when I'm pushing myself to do a lot more than what I can at that day. So if I'm feeling like I'm just gonna jam for 1 hour or produce for 1 hour and I cannot hear anything more, then I just let it be at that moment. It's just better for my psychology, I think. But physically, I don't have, like, I could go 10 hours just standing, sitting, no problem. Lying down, I don't have any problem with that.
yeah. Yeah.
And second, with the sounds,
second.
second question, the sounds. I mean, I don't have really good sound in here, but I'm trying to do my best. I'm just comparing the tracks, the tracks that I know that are sounding really well, and with the tracks that I am mixing in the end, and trying to find like a good balance. But actually, my like monitors are really cheap, and like
Your headphones to judge it.
I also use the headphones. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I also use the headphones. Yeah, just to check. I have two very cheap monitors, and I check on both of them plus the headphones. And I have like because you get used to, even if it's like a cheaper thing, you get used to the quality of it, and you understand it better. You can get the most out of it. And since we are also not playing and earning any money, so I'm not planning on buying expensive stuff right now. So
I think it doesn't really matter. I mean, yes, it matters what you use, but I've made music on the crappiest things, and they still sound pretty good these days. And I've made things on crazy expensive monitors, and now I'm thinking like, oh, what was I thinking? Sometimes when your monitoring is too good, you'll also get very satisfied quite quickly because everything sounds good.
yeah,
Work is hard. That's my personal experience.
yeah,
Well,
100%.
there's two aspects about monitoring. One is hearing what you are doing, just judging what you are doing, and I think in that circumstance, it's just nice. It's nice to have a pair of speakers which give you a pleasant sound, that is enjoyable, that give you enjoyable sound, and then there is the technical judgment, like how is everything sitting in the mix? How does the whole thing hold together in technical terms? And usually um, I go for the pleasant sound when I'm making music, and I go for the crappy sound, like you know just a small speaker, or and even the speaker in the phone, or in a computer screen or whatever, to judge how it translates as a sort of universal um, sounding thing, how it compares to all the other music which is out there, if how it sits in context of how people are actually going to listen to it.
Yeah,
So
that's a good point.
yeah, so there's two ways of judging what you are doing. One is the
Yeah,
I mean, it doesn't really make sense to listen
Boombox.
to laptops.
yeah. Rotat is also writing
Oh,
about.
boombox. Yes.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, the car trick. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly, in the car. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a way to
Um,
judge how it translates to consumer systems. But I don't like to listen to consumer systems when I'm making music. I just want all the frequencies, from the very lowest sub to the highest high,
yeah,
just to enjoy the sonic experience. And then after that, you kind of um, tame it a little bit to make it
yeah,
translatable to other systems. But it's nice to enjoy it with its full range and full dynamics.
Yeah.
yeah,
But
yeah.
I mean, there's then always the question also, like you said, where has the music been played? So I think through your phone, through the laptop speakers, through your Sonos speaker, how it translates on there. Can you hear the kick drum? Because on the PMC speakers with a nice subwoofer, yeah, you have the low end and you have the top end of the kick, but does it, like you said, translate on an iPhone or earbuds on? So I think, yeah, it's really, yeah, if you keep in mind where the music has been played, I think that is that, and you should cross-check on that, right?
I think my HD25s are my 100% best
Yeah,
monitoring thing ever. Yeah,
that's
yeah,
good.
that's true.
I
mean,
mean,
that's
that's
the,
not good on there. Anyway.
yeah,
Really? Yeah.
I think
But
everyone
there's no
has them. Yeah,
uncomfortable. I use it for DJing. I use it
Yeah,
for
Sounds
mixing.
really
It's gonna
good.
play everywhere.
yeah.
Okay.
I listen to all my
There's not
music on this.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
exactly. There is no device where I have listened more music on than these. These are
Right.
16 fucking years old. 16 years.
Time for some
So
new ones.
yeah, they work
Yeah,
perfectly.
yeah. I have at home, I have a Genelex, dus in the near field. And then I have the very big ones, the 8050, and you can go really, really hard. But I use them not that often. I use more often the near field, and then I check it on the other small speakers, you know. So yeah, but I love the Genelex. It has really good, for me, very yeah, clear sound. I hear the high, the mid, the bass. I don't have any subwoofers, so I do everything. I'm doing the mix down through these speakers, and yeah, and with the mix down, it takes like 3 days. So when I do the mix down, then I wait another day, I listen again, and then tweak again, listen again, tweak again, and then when I have a yes feeling, then it's time to go to the mastering.
Yes feeling.
Yes.
That's a good one.
I work with the yes feeling.
Oh
The
yeah,
yes
I like the yes feeling. The yes feeling is the best feeling.
Yes.
And with the no feeling, your wife
No
can
feeling is
Not the no feeling, not the baby feeling.
Yeah.
The yes feeling.
The yes feeling.
I'm here for the yes feeling. Yeah.
Otherwise, she erases it, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
It's gone.
Exactly.
Next,
Simple
next.
as that.
No.
No clutter. Go to the next one.
Joachim spoke about the very
amazing.
clinical sounding monitor speakers, and the pleasant sound for writing the music, and the very clinical kind of like maybe flatter sounding speakers. You people, or some people, really enjoy mixing on very neutral and very flat sounding speakers. I find that really terrible, because I think there goes like a lot of like dimension goes lost. I have the Neumann KH310, the 310s, and they're very bassy, and I think they have sometimes problems with accuracy of kick drums. Like a 909 kick drum sometimes sounds as if there's a bit phasing going on, I think. But they give an overall very pleasant, hi-fi almost sounding feeling. And I had a reference speaker pair, like the APS, and I couldn't use them at all, because I was like, okay, so it sounds like a cardboard kind compared to the other pair. So I have only one pair of speakers in the studio, because I think when you know you're, like Nene mentioned, she has only a pair that might not be the best speaker, but when you know it, you can mix music, and Joris said that as well. You can mix music on the shittiest speaker.
Oh
When
yeah,
you-
yeah, of course, yeah. Dude, I'm only talking about this because that was the subject, but I've done headphones, man.
Yeah. No,
Yeah,
that's what I was. No, I didn't mean that you kind of like, you know, but my
Yeah, I don't
personal
want to come
experience-
across as snobby about this. As I told
No,
you,
no, no.
you know, I can do stuff on white earbuds or whatever. It doesn't matter. For me, the making music is all about the excitement, not about anything else. But it does make a difference if you have a pleasant listening experience. That's all I'm
Oh
saying.
yeah, I'm totally with you. I could not. I mean, in the back. I have these rockets, but this is just for DJing. I could, because I know what I have in the studio. I could not make music on these. Here I have two Adam A7, like the old ones. But these ones I find, like for producing, I find them, I don't know, it's just like a personal taste. But that doesn't mean that no one can write great music on these speakers, right? And I'm also, when it comes to acoustic treatment in the room, I spend a lot of time on sorting this out, but more as a personal choice, instead of, okay, this is the ultimate, this is what you need to write good music. I think, like Joachim, like Nene, like everyone said and agrees to, you can write music on Mac Pro speakers if you are in the flow.
Absolutely. People, we are
You're
near
done.
the 2
Oh
hour
my, 2
mark.
hours.
I don't.
Oh.
As far as I'm concerned, we just keep chatting.
Yeah.
I'm not in a hurry to do anything, but I don't want to waste your time if you are doing something else. But maybe, let me know. We can continue a little bit more.
Yeah,
Maybe
let's do
give
it.
some time for the people
Maybe
who are
the
watching.
comments.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, because
Yeah,
Oh yeah, there
I'm
were
so
a lot.
sorry we've been ignoring you people.
Oh.
So maybe something about that is directed to any of the guests who are here, like something specific you want to know.
I saw Robin asked me a question, and we spoke about it when I met him last time. About I have a pair of Rupert Neve 511 preamps in the studio.
Ooh,
and
fancy.
and I have to be honest. I think something that is, we spoke about speakers, doesn't matter, but I think what is necessary for a good quality sound is the preamps, and also there's VST preamps, but that doesn't come close to the sound shaping devices that are actually
Robin.
that are
Hey,
actually.
Robin!
So I'm totally convinced by the Rupert Neve. Like in the lunchbox, I have a pair, and I like them especially on more digital synth, maybe to give it, because they have this silk setting. You can add a nice texture to it. On drums, I for example like the Burl preamps, the B1D, because it has this copper transformers and all that. So I think, or here I have a 2 preamp. Something that I would maybe even recommend someone about hardware would be preamps first, in a way.
Wow, let me use the knee. Never. Curious.
Yeah, they do make a lot of difference. Even if it's a good quality desk preamp. Not standalone, but just part of a channel strip. That's usually how it gets used here. So, there are different desks and different channel strips, part of a desk, which sometimes it's just part of the chain. Just go into a channel and then to a direct out and have the preamp. With you can vary the gain settings and to get a slightly different sound. Yeah. So.
Oh yeah, I think it's the sound shaping device, and I mean we all have relatively good audio interfaces, but and there's preamps in as well, right? In the Fireface I have here, there's mic channels and stuff. But
the Fireface the same here.
It's good components, but a dedicated preamp or a nice channel strip on a mixing board. I have the old Midas in the studio. They have, I think, Bosch preamps, and you can shape sound. You can drive them hot, and something that gives aesthetic to the sound. Like I said, with a digital sounding synthesizer, you run it a little hotter through a nice pair of preamps, and it opens up. The stereo gets nice. You have a nicer dynamic range. So preamps are something I really enjoy these days.
But
I'm listening to you.
Can't you just have can't you do the same with having a mixer? Mixer like Soundcraft or Mackie. There you can boost everything and EQ it and have maybe the same result. Or not? If it,
no.
It's like with studio monitors. There's a range from cheap to affordable to crazy expensive, and what Henning is talking about now is the crazy expensive stuff. So
that is expensive. But can't you get
dedicated preamps?
Is there a difference? I'm just asking, out of curiosity. Is there a difference?
There must be a difference because they're very different prices.
Yeah, but I mean, difference in the sound. I'm talking about.
I would say yes.
I
would say yes.
I
would say yes.
Yeah, it must be.
Yeah.
I mean, a little bit off topic, but a little bit on the same topic. For the first time, I feel like a real grown up because like 2 weeks ago, I went to the hi-fi store to buy myself like a decent hi-fi system for the first time in my life. I just went there. I just went there to upgrade, to buy some Sonos speakers, and I walked out with a lot more. And I have to say, I was listening to only the difference in amplifiers. I would have been the most skeptical guy to show me any of this, and it was a world of difference between, let's say, €1,000 amplifier only and 2,000 amplifier. So I think the same works with preamps. There's a lot more dynamic. I don't know about them range, but it just colors the music, and definition is just different. I assume I don't have so much experience these things, but I think there must be The question I do have though is like if this difference is something you can also replicate with all the VSTs that I have in my Ableton, you know, from
Yeah, but
UAD to
that's
Yeah,
already, then it's already in the box.
UAD.
The
Yeah.
preamps are
yeah, no, I
there
understand.
before you go into the box.
I know, but
Yeah.
I mean, when it comes, the idea is that the final result is what counts. So I don't really care if I get it through running it through a preamp or just getting it through like tweaking a couple of knobs. I mean, or like digital knobs.
Yeah.
So I don't know. That's something I'd be very
is a
curious
good
to.
quality. UAD is very good quality to get good sound of.
Yeah, but it's a copy,
For
a digital copy, an emulation of an analog circuitry, and I think you can emulate compressors, you can emulate EQs, but when it comes to preamps that are sound shaping tools to gain stage, the digital emulations do definitely perform different. I wouldn't say better, but I would say also personal taste. I would go over a nice pair of analog preamps than an emulation, because from my experience they definitely change the characteristic and the quality of the audio, and what you then afterwards, I agree, there's
You have
VSTs.
to work less hard to make it sound good once it's
Once the recording
what-
quality.
yeah, exactly. So you if you record with a good preamp and on the right level into your DAW, there's you find yourself spending less time EQing or leveling because it's the signal is just optimized. It's already there. You know, it's got all the characteristics of that you were looking for, and you don't have to boost anything because, or well, you might want to adjust, but you find yourself doing less to the signal if it's recorded well with a good preamp.
Yeah,
That's
and
basically.
and and the
so
UAD
it might
plugins are
save you
very
some
often
time.
the
Yeah, it's a time
UAD
saver. Yeah,
plugins.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a good tip. It might save me time with mixdown because with
I doubt that
mixdown
though.
takes.
I wonder. I mean, the
Eh?
mixdown is still the most important thing, you know. And in the mixdown, so much can go wrong. You might have made like the perfectly recorded things with the best preamps, but then if you do a bad
Yeah.
mixdown, it still sounds like crap.
I think it doesn't influence the mix down and your skills, but you have audio material that is, like Joachim said, in a quality that you can achieve more with than with a not so good recorded audio through
Yeah.
a cheaper or not so good analog digital conversion. And I mean, look at the glue compressor in Ableton. That is basically a replica of a VCA compressor, of an SSL bus compressor. And I think in a VCA compressor, um, a VST emulation compared to, if you have them at okay levels, if you don't drive the hardware too hot, you don't really notice a difference between a VCA compressor hardware and a VCA compressor VST plugin. I think that is something you could save your money on, use good emulations, good plugins, but when it really comes to the the amping of sounds, the amplification of sounds, that is something people maybe should consider in a good pair.
I agree with you that you if people are at the stage where they really understand what they're doing and they got the whole process of making music down and they've got they are productive and want to invest to update their signal path, I agree with you. It makes more sense to upgrade to better signal path going into the box than to mastering stuff to fix things that are broken anyway. So it's better to invest in stuff that makes your sound going in better rather
Yeah.
than
Or even a
spending
DI box. Run
yeah,
run
exactly.
run a synthesizer through a DI box, and the phases get tight,
Yeah.
and it doesn't have to be a 7, 8, 900 euro preamp mono. You can use again, Rupert Neve, the DI boxes, but the signal gets clean. The noise ratio gets better, the phasing, and then you go into the box, and the audio is of a higher quality, maybe, without again judging if that is necessary or not. But sonically, like you said, what comes before and like the signal path is something that can definitely have an influence, despite if you have skills of mixing it or not. But that is what I experienced when I started looking at preamps. That is something where I.
But if you start using these kind of preamps, then you also need to convert them in a proper way. Like you can't really get away with doing it in a Fireface or something. You want to
The
get
Fireface, I think, is are
proper.
very good chips. In the studio I have two SSL converters, which are, I wouldn't say they are not as good as the new UCX from RME, for example, or Lynx Aurora. I mean, of course, once you decide to go pro, of course you have preamps in a way, and you have a good interface. But I would rather get, like I said, a pair of preamps than a tube compressor. But I mean, if I can get a tube compressor hardware, I would also get that one. This is where the money goes.
This is all personal, eh? This is all personal, eh? What do you want to do? What do you want to make? What kind of sounds
Your
you
music
want to
isn't gonna get
create?
better. That's the problem.
Exactly.
I agree. But but sonically, like it when you break it down, when you compare what went straight into your €500 interface, or when you compare what went through a signal path that is like maybe more expensive, then I think you can tell a difference, and in the end it results
of course.
But then people are going to listen back to it on their laptop speakers, or on their iPhone, or on their Apple iPods or AirPods.
we are talking about the last. Henning, you must agree. We are talking about the last few, or maybe even the last percent.
It's really
yeah, but I don't.
I think it's the fetishism, It's the fetishism of sound. It's like it's only for you if you have the possibility to do that, and you have the understanding of doing that.
All the albums you love, from Pink Floyd to, I don't know, Metallica, Tangerine Dream, that shit has all been recorded on proper studio equipment in a way, and I think
you're opening up a discussion, which is we can talk about it for another 3 hours. I don't even know how to start.
Hey Henning, come back some other time, and we do like a whole show about 500 series.
I want to say one thing, because I think that's a very valid and interesting point that you're making, Henning. However, I assume you're a one-man band. I assume you're your own engineer, your own drum programmer, your own synth programmer, your own preset designer, your own engineer, master. I don't know. You're everything yourself, right? With any of these albums that you just mentioned, for all of these things that I just mentioned, there was somebody who did that for a living. So that you cannot compare these things, And yes, of course, they use very good equipment, but this is the problem of being an electronic music producer. You have to be all these freaking things, You have to be able to understand everything, to know how to make music, and to know all the technical aspects as well. And then we're talking about preamps and this and that. It's like mind-boggling, It's we can never really make the same level of quality music as all these master albums. It's never gonna happen.
On the other hand, Henning, it's also true that some of the biggest selling tracks or records were basically just cassette tapes recordings, or CDRs from a bedroom somewhere.
Also, yeah,
that happened as well.
Billie Eilish, I think, it's made in a bedroom, probably on a laptop.
But
biggest streaming track.
I think it all comes to what kind of sound you want to bring out. How do you want it to sound? I mean, if you are doing, if you're recording, you're doing the mix down, you have an idea how you want it, the vibe, the sound at the
Yeah.
end. That's how
Yeah, no,
I
of
see
course.
it.
Totally
Yeah. I mean, that is but I mean, the creative part and the technical part are two things you can look at like separately.
True, but in
agree.
electronic music, they overlap, and they're sometimes even the same thing.
I mean, these days it gets more and more popular that you have people mixing your stuff, maybe even producing your stuff. And I think that is what techno and electronic music has always been a bit shy of. To like, you had to be your, like Joris said, you had to be 7-8 people in one. And in other genres, of course, you use a mixing engineer or any other engineer in the studio. Metallica didn't record their album just like, they were just the musicians playing it. And of course, the creativity is at another stage, but we are in a time where you can make the greatest music on the most simple equipment, but I still believe that it does make a difference in how you approach the writing process and the engineering process. And even though in the end it will be played on a, I don't know, €1,000 iPhone, there is an iPhone 1,000?
Is it?
Is it?
I bought my second hand for 300.
Okay,
Is
it's
it
getting
1,000?
late.
Is it 1,000? I don't know.
You're checking out.
When it comes, isn't it €1,000 when it comes out? Anyways, okay, maybe it's cheaper, but I think it's a bit of you can do. It doesn't matter in the end. I think it does matter in the end, and even a Billie Eilish, what's her name? Irish.
Yeah.
Billie, if she does it, if she did it, like if the story is she did it in her bedroom with,
Her brother did
I
it.
don't know what, her brother did it.
Yeah.
It's a major release. I think someone put his or her hands on and made it.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
of
no,
course.
of course. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. But I would say we are really. I'm not saying we're over time, but I think we should use the time.
Was I so wrong with the iPhone thing?
No,
I
it's
mean,
fine.
come on, when it comes out, when a new iPhone is €1,000.
Subtle flex.
iPhone 11, this is the 6S, don't get me wrong, this is the oldest phone you can get. But when you get a new phone, an iPhone, what is it, 11 Pro is what, 1,100?
For that price.
Huh?
Yeah. A mono preamp you can buy for that price.
You can buy 2 preamps from Rupert Neve with it, actually.
No, I was
Bam.
going to give every one of you an opportunity to maybe plug something you want to plug. Is anybody doing any releases these days, or
Yay.
a
Yes.
fucking badass record on Records?
Oh, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Oh, Shinedoe.
How's
Yeah.
that? How's that going?
Oh, it crazy. It really. I mean, it came out before the lockdown in February, and it had so much good feedback. I'm just curious also to hear back from Radio Slave. But I'm really happy about the record because it's like what I was saying, music I make for my soul. I spend time on my mix down. I put the hours in, and it's really nice if people love it. You have also
Yeah, I
the
love
same
it. I
feeling
love
if the
it.
music is out
It's
there.
great.
Yeah, thank you. So new. I'm working on MTM Records. That's my label. I started it last year, and so I'm working on third release. So around August it's coming out, and I'm also working on a new album. I don't have the exact date, but now is the time. No
So
gigs.
productive. Wow.
Taking this time to work on. Yeah.
That's a lot of stuff. What about you, Nene? You've got anything coming up?
Yeah, from September on, actually, I have a couple of EPs an album, and some compilations. September, October, November, December, January. I'm like every month I have 1 or 2 things coming up. I'm super excited about it.
Banging it out.
I did a lot of tracks, and but I'm drained out, like, because also it's a lot of learning process, you know. So my brain was like, okay, get the information, but now I need to like have a little bit of break. So I'm taking my break. I'm going to visit my family also, going to Turkey for a week and stuff, and just making a little bit less. But the releases will be coming while I'm chilling, hopefully. Yeah.
Awesome.
That's cool.
Yeah.
And you?
I would like to send you also.
Yeah.
You
bring it on.
guys.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah.
Great.
Good. Good. Just
And
to
you,
have a little bit of feedback.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure.
Awesome. Thank you.
Henning, anything to plug?
Well, I dusted out my archive, like I said earlier. I was going through old tracks, and I have also a few compilation signings coming up. But I wasn't really writing new stuff. Like I mentioned earlier, I was like more experimenting with new ways of creating music. So I didn't really. There's no new material, no original material, because I discovered other things than writing and recording new shit.
Cool. Okay, I'm gonna bug you sometime about those unreleased, not for the public.
Not for the public
recordings.
stuff. Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Awesome.
Well, thanks
Wow.
everyone for hanging out. I can't believe the
Yeah,
time went
thank
so fast.
you.
It's 2
Thank
hours,
you.
21
Yeah.
minutes. Oh my God, crazy.
Yeah. Crazy.
For the people who are still hanging on to us rambling, thanks for joining in the YouTube chat. And actually, I'm going to move over to our Discord server in a bit. We set up a Discord server to grow a community, talking about gear, about the making music process, and there should be a link somewhere in the description. Yeah, that's where we will hang out for a little bit longer. If anybody didn't see their questions answered, you can go there and try again. And otherwise we can see you all back in the chat next week with different people. And I love to chat with you all. You're welcome to come again and join us again here. Really enjoy this
Thank you so much.
chat with
Yeah,
you.
thank you. It was fun.
It was
Something
amazing. Thank
different.
you.
Nice to see you
Thank
guys.
you.
Hope to see you in
Yeah.
real life, Nene and Henning.
Yeah, hopefully soon. After
Yeah,
crazy
real life.
Corona times. Yeah. Oh.
Okay, so thanks again.
Bye bye.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Ciao.
Bye, guys. Take care.
Ciao.
Tschüss.